Hello everyone, I'm Ankit Bhardwaj. This is joint work with my lab mates at Utah. Today I want to talk about adaptive placement of storage functions on an in-memory key value store. Kernel bypass key value stores offer less than 10 microsecond latency and millions of operations per second throughput. Such key value stores are fast because they only support simple get-put operations, which makes the key value stores inefficient in terms of data movement to the client and client stall for the data. One solution is to run application logic on the server. However, the server can quickly become the bottleneck and effects propagate back to the clients. The key idea behind our work is to break the application logic in smaller functions which are decoupled from storage, profile these functions at runtime, and adaptively place these functions on client or server to avoid bottlenecks. Microsecond scale and competition with fast get-put interface makes this problem challenging. Today in data center, fast network has made it practical to disaggregate compute from storage. Separating compute and storage eases provisioning. And both the storage tier and compute tier can scale independently. In this talk, I'll be talking specifically about in-memory storage systems, and there are many such systems like RAM Cloud and FORM. However, moving data to compute comes at a cost. This data movement cost include data copying, serialization, deserialization. One solution is to push the application logic to server by breaking the application into smaller functions. So, what would we need to make storage functions practical for in-memory storage systems that process millions of requests per second with microsecond timescales? There would be several requirements driven mainly by high performance of kernel bypass networking and in-memory data. Here are some of the requirements. First, invoke and execute logic at microsecond scales, which requires low invocation overheads. The storage function should be able to compete with fast disaggregated architecture, which requires native code performance. The server should be able to scale the functions to multi-core without much overheads. All this can be done using loadable compiled extension to the storage. And Splinter is one such system, which allows loading the compiled extensions at runtime. Server-side execution of storage functions improves storage server throughput. Imagine a storage client that has data stored in the key value pairs, and internally those key value pairs contains key that refers to other values in storage. For example, here imagine a client has structured value in key value stored in a tree-like fashion. To look something up in the tree, first it fetches the root node, then it fetches the interior node referred by the root node, and then it finally fetches some leaf node representing the data item stored in the tree. These traversals can be performed by 3 remote requests, but this places 3 times as much request processing load on the server as it would if the server could traverse the structure stored in the key value pairs itself. On the left is the graph which shows the throughput for client-side execution. In the figure, y-axis shows the number of tree traversal done by the system with one server, and x-axis shows the traversal depth. A traversal depth 2 means the client issues a GET, receives the response, and issues another GET based on the previous response. The throughput decreases with increase in the traversal depth because the server needs to do more work with increase in the depth. Assume the server allows the client to run storage functions on the server. And imagine the client rewrote the same traversal logic as a small function and embedded that tree traversal function in the store. Now, it can invoke the function to find a specific value in the tree without issuing GET request to fetch the root and the interior node of the tree. The function can perform the traversal and eliminate request and data movement. It reduces RPCs and RTTs from n down to 1 per traversal. The blue bar shows the throughput for server-side execution, and even for a traversal depth of 4, the server side performs 50% better than the client side. Server-side execution doesn't only improve performance for a micro benchmark like tree traversal, but also shows gain for real applications like Facebook's Tau. Tau graph operations perform 2x better as compared to state-of-the-art disaggregated systems like FARM for a single core performance. we prototyped this server-side function scheme in a key-value store called Splinter, from which we took these numbers. It works well, but it introduces a key problem. Blind server-side placement for every function doesn't necessarily improves the performance. Only the data-intensive functions, which accesses a lot of data but doesn't do much compute, are good for server-side placement. The compute-intensive function can quickly make the server CPU a bottleneck, and an overloaded server won't be able to service get-put operations. So this is bad for overall system throughput because the server executes lower number of operations and the client stalls for the data. Here is a graph that illustrates this problem by extending the tree traversal example by adding additional compute to the function. The y-axis shows a storage server's throughput for performing these tree traversals. The blue line shows throughput when the traversal logic is run at the storage server. The red line shows the throughput when the traversal is done step by step at the client as before. The tree here is depth 2. So for each traversal operation, the client has to issue 2 GET requests to the server. Ignore the x-axis for now and just look at the points on the far left. Like we showed before, running this logic server side is faster by 22% in this case. But if the logic that is run on the server is more complex, it uses more server-side CPU, which cuts into the request processing throughput on the server. The x-axis shows precisely this. We inserted some number of BGWorks cycle into the function that performs the traversal, which simulates functions that require different amount of compute per data item they access. As the amount of CPU work done by the function increases, the server slows down. So if the storage function executes just 100 extra cycles per tree traversal for this workload, it would be more efficient to do that work at the client side to avoid slowing down the server. The server throughput decreases even further with increase in compute, and on the extreme right, the server side execution performs 55% lower than the client side when each invocation performs 10K CPU cycles of work. One solution to avoid storage bottlenecks is to migrate the data to another server and balance the load among servers. However, it depends on the workload. The workload can change in 2 ways. The clients are making more function invocations, or each invocation to the same function has different compute requirements based on some input arguments. And if the workload is bursty or unstable, in both such cases, that the data migration and load balancing won't help much. So instead of doing data migration and load balancing, the key idea of this paper is to write logically decoupled function. When a tenant sends a function, it is loaded at both the client and the server. And the client can physically run these functions on the client side or server side, depending on the load on the server. The goal of this work is to get the best of both the worlds. The black dotted line shows the ideal case, where the system would want to take advantage of server-side execution for data-intensive functions and run the compute-intensive functions on the client side. However, the behavior of a function can change based on the input argument or part taken. So we don't partition all these functions into data-intensive or compute-intensive functions pre-hand, but starts all the function on the server, and if the server realizes that it has made a mistake, then it pushes the invocation back to the client. Here's the pictorial view of server-side execution of a storage function. The client sends an invoke RPC to the server, and the server starts executing a function based on the arguments. This particular invocation performs a get, followed by some compute and a get. After some time, the server realizes that it has made a mistake. So it pushes the invocation back to the client, which saves the server some CPU cycles, which can be used to execute some other pending work on the server. Adaptive storage function placement, or ASFP, relies on mechanisms to run the dynamically loaded storage functions on the server, suspend and start the function on the client, and on the policies to control the mechanisms and decide the placement. I'll talk about mechanisms first, and ASFP needs 3 types of mechanism to achieve the adaptive function placement. On server side, ASFP needs a way to load, execute, and suspend the storage functions. On the client side, ASFP needs a runtime which can execute unmodified storage functions and a way for functions to access the remote data transparently. Besides that, the server needs a consistency and concurrency control as the function run in parallel of clients and the server. The figure shows the state diagram to execute a storage function on the server side. The client issues an invoke request to the server, which specifies a function that the client pre-installed at the server. The server converts each such request to a cooperative task. The job of the created task is to run the specified function and send the output back to the client. A scheduler on each core executes these tasks in a round-robin fashion. Each task accesses the data using getPut interface and performs some computation on the fetched data. If the task finishes on the server, then the result is sent back to the client. And if the server realizes that the invocation is compute bound, then it sends the pushback response to the client, at which point the clients will try to execute that same function logic itself instead. Each core in Splinter storage server can receive client's request. So client's function invocation can run in parallel at the server, and pushback invocations run parallel to the server tasks, which can leave the key value store data in an inconsistent state. For consistency and concurrency control, the server uses optimistic concurrency control and runs each invocation in a strict serializable transaction. Besides from consistency and concurrency issues, the transactions are also useful for pushback in two ways. First, the server tracks each getPut request done by a task, and at pushback, it sends the read-write set back to the client. So the client never needs to refetch records that the server has already accessed when a function is pushed back. They are all transmitted to the client directly at the time the function is pushed back. And second, the server doesn't need to maintain any state for pushback invocations like metadata and logs. This makes any recovery or state reclamation unnecessary on client failure. With OCC, clients get the exact same strong consistency semantics regardless of whether a function completes at the server, at the client, or it runs partly at both. This all gets handled transparently from client's perspective. Here is another state diagram which shows the client-side execution of storage functions for pushback invocations. The client creates a cooperative task for each pushback response and installs the read-write set in per invocation cache and marks the task as ready. Similar as server, the round-robin scheduler execute these ready tasks. When a running task needs any data, it checks the local cache for it, and if it is not in the cache, the client issues a remote get. This happens when the server pushed the function back, but hasn't accessed all the values the function would eventually use. So the pushed back read-write set didn't contain all the values needed to compute the complete result. The data access using get works in transparent manner, and the invocation doesn't know if the data is accessed locally or from a remote server. The puts are performed locally in the cache. If a task issues a remote get, then it waits for the data in awaiting data state. The client do other work while waiting for the server to respond with missing values. On response, the client installs the value in the cache and the task is moved to the ready state. The task starts from get whenever it gets a chance to run again. And now the data would be present in the local cache. At the end, the task sends a validation RPC to the server with the read-write sets and waits for a commit or abort response. Aborts could happen if another transaction has already modified values that this transaction depends on. An aborted transaction is restarted at the server again. I talked about mechanisms needed for ASFP, and now I'll talk about the policies for function placement. At a high level, it includes two things. First, server overload detection, and second, the classification of an invocation into data-intensive or compute-intensive function. It is always better to execute a task on server because it reduces data movement, and if the server isn't overloaded, then CPU isn't bottlenecking other work. So the server needs an overload detection policy to start the pushback mechanism to shed some load. The scheduler on each core on the server runs three types of tasks. First, a dispatcher task, which polls the network queue and converts RPC requests into tasks. Second, invoke tasks, which executes the logic in storage functions. And the third tasks are for point operations like getPut. Once each core has new tasks, it checks the number of tasks already in the queue. And if there are more than T number of old tasks in the queue and the server thread receives T more tasks, the server starts the pushback mechanism. Otherwise, the dispatcher adds the task to the queue and the scheduler runs these tasks in round-robin manner. Classify and pushback stage only pushbacks, compute-intensive tasks, and data-intensive tasks are left in the queue. The algorithm guarantees that the server starts the pushback only when there are some unfinished tasks in the queue, and it also got some more tasks, means that the queue is building up at the server. Second, even after pushback, the server should not be idle, and it has at least T tasks in the queue. The algorithm only considers the invoked tasks which got at least one chance to run on the server, so that the server has some idea for each task, whether it is data or compute intensive. The overload detection used is similar as the one used in the Shenango. And once the server is overloaded, it classifies each old task into compute or data intensive tasks and pushbacks the compute intensive tasks. For classification, the server maintains the time spent in data access and compute for each invocation. Assume that at the time of classification, an invocation has done n data accesses. Then the server classifies an invocation compute intensive if the compute time is more than the time which the server would have spent in handling n RPCs. This condition makes sure that at max, each invocation only takes server CPU time comparable to client-side execution. In the evaluation, I'll try to answer three questions with the help of experimental results. First, what gains do we get with ASFP and what are its overheads? Second, how do OCC and ASFP interact? And third, how does ASFP perform for a mix of applications? Here is the setup used to perform the experiments. We use one server and 4 clients, each with 10 cores and 64 GB RAM. And all these machines are connected through 25 Gbps Mellanox ConnectX-4 NIC. The server was populated with 15 GB of read-write set, and we use 120 million records for that, where each key is 30 bytes long and each value is 100 bytes long. To show if ASFP improves the server throughput, we use a micro benchmark which accesses 3 gets followed by the C cycle of compute shown by x-axis. Y-axis shows the throughput. The red line is for client-side execution, the blue line is for server-side execution, and gray represents the pushback case. For low compute, the pushback and server side performs 33% better than the client side, as both these cases avoid data movement. For high compute, the server side is way lower than the client side because of CPU bottleneck, and pushback is comparable to client side as it reduces the compute on the server. To show the ASFP overheads, we use micro benchmark, same as previous graph, but in this case, each invocation only accesses 2 records. For compute-intensive invocations, the pushback performs 15% lower than the client side, though majority of 15% is due to the fact that the overload detection keeps some tasks on the server to avoid server idleness. So, some compute-intensive tasks complete on the server, which lowers the pushback throughput a bit. And when we make the overload detection more aggressive, where server pushbacks almost all the tasks. In this case, the pushback throughput is just 3% lower than the client side. So ASFP overhead can be controlled with aggressive overload detection policy. However, the problem with such a policy is that the server pushes back almost all the tasks to the client, which might result in more work for clients and server will be idle. This experiment shows how do ASFP and OCC interact. We use the same micro benchmark and setup for this experiment as previous experiment. It shows that the pushback throughput where the server doesn't send the read-write set back to the client is 33% lower than the pushback where the server sends the read-write set at pushback. This is because sending the read-write set back to the client guarantees that the ASFP never executes more requests to run a function than if the function were run client-side to begin with. Finally, we evaluate ASFP performance for a mix of applications. We run 3 applications in this experiment. First is Facebook's Tau, which performs operations on social graph. 60% operation does one data access and remaining makes 2 data dependent accesses. Please refer the paper for more details. Both D3 and R4S perform disk failure prediction. In these applications, the server trains a model and predicts if the disk is about to fail or not in a data center. We pre-populate the test data on the server and the client issues the request with the data entry number in the argument. In actual data center, this data would come from different machines. For D3, the server uses decision tree, and for R4S, the server uses random forest to train and predict the disk failure. Tau is data bound and remaining 2 are compute bound applications. For this experiment, we use 1 server and 3 clients, and each client generate request for 1 application. So 1 client generate request for Tau, 1 for D3, and 1 for R4S. Solid bar region shows the throughput due to server-side execution, and hashed region shows the throughput due to client-side executions. Let's start with server-side performance. Every application behaves poorly because the server CPU becomes the bottleneck due to compute-bound D3 and R4S. And when all these applications are run on client side, they perform much better than the server side. As we have enough compute capacity on client and server can handle millions of GET operations. Compared to server side, Tau performs 160% better, D3 performs 33% better, and R4S performs 77% better. The overall client side throughput for all 3 applications is 66% better than the server side. Tau is data intensive and ideally should run on server side. So Tau performs 36% better than client side in case of pushback, and other 2 perform similar as client side, as pushback will move most of such invocations to the client side. As mentioned earlier, all invocations are started on the server and the system can distinguish the Tau invocation from ML functions, letting them run mostly server side. This accelerates the server and it even lets some of the ML operations be run on server side, accelerating them as well. So the overall system can adaptively place to accelerate storage for this mix of function invocations with no a priori knowledge about what they compute or what data they access. The total pushback throughput is 80% better than pure server side execution and 10% better than pure client side execution. ASFP is inspired from different work in various domains. First is storage, procedure, and UDFs. Many SQL systems support both storage, procedure, and UDFs, but they are poor fit for specialized computation. Second is work offloading and code migration in mobile and edge computing. Maui is one such system, but it works in different timescales and use cases. And lastly, thread migration and process migration resembles with ASFP invocation movement from server to client. Sprite and Condor system supports task and thread migration, but it is really slow, which makes it unusable for microsecond scale work. So in conclusion, the kernel bypass key value stores are really fast but inefficient due to data movement, and this inefficiency can be avoided if we run the application logic on the server. However, the server has limited CPU capacity and can become a bottleneck for compute-intensive functions. In our work, we classify invocations at runtime and adaptively place to avoid any bottlenecks. By doing so, we achieve the best of both the worlds: server-side execution for data-intensive invocation and client-side execution for compute-intensive invocations. Thank you for listening.